Well, hi everybody. This is Meteorologist Amy Metz. I'm going to check that I'm live now. I'm using a lot of new software, a lot of new things here. So one of my devices makes a humming noise that I'm working on. And I have my green screen working, so that's good news. I'm about to be live a lot more clearly, easier to talk to everybody. In the meantime, because of the buzzing on my computer, I have on some royalty-free music in the background here. And feel free to share music with me. I've been sharing music from friends on my lives in the background. So it looks like I'm still, yes, I am live and connected. Okay, so now that that's good, want to welcome everybody to the Weather Woman YouTube page. I have not posted very much directly onto here, but I would like to use this channel predominantly moving forward and also have some group projects I'm working on. We'll probably have team pages. So here on Weather Woman on YouTube, I will be posting most of these videos and sharing them on my Facebook, Weather Woman, and Amy Metz profile, especially when it's big like this. So there's a ton here. I'm going to use my cursor here a lot to show locations, but there's some storms that left the tropics, that went up past Japan, past South Korea. If anybody's been following me, you know that it's been very busy season for them. A lot of destructive storms. There was Bobby that went through here, and then more recently we had two more. So now the leftovers are drifting on northward. We've been in a La Nina, by the way, so you know La Nina is a big role here why Hawaii has not seen a lot of big storms this year. We have cooler than average water temperatures for this part of the world. So that means that all of these warm storms, they're going very far north over Hawaii, also over the fires. Unfortunately, these sorts of La Nina setups also mean that we're not seeing a lot of wind over where the fires are. We're not seeing a lot of storms or rain in that area. And since I'm touching on that, before I dig into the tracks with the rest of these, I will look a little bit at the rain here. So unfortunately, it's just, even though there's a few storms passing by rain-wise, it's not really adding up and helping with the fire reprieve. So whatever you may think or have been hearing and reading about climate change causing these storms, I would like to just go ahead and put a halt to that right away. And I'm producing some videos to show proofs of that, including fire chiefs, including scientists, climate scientists, meteorologists. I mean, these are arson. There were tons and tons of arsons going on here. And it just so happened to be an opportune time for those fires to blast and stretch and move instead of being put out by rain. So that's an unfortunate turn of events, and luckily they're finally seeing some clouds as we see, but unfortunately not a lot of rain. And now we do have Beta here. Beta just formed, I think this was today. If not, you know, this conglomeration here of storms has been in the area for about a week or two, even was part of my forecast with Sally. So we had Karina come up here, which is now gone. What looks to me like another development of storms that could be coming together here is adding moisture into Teddy. Luckily, we see where Sally had gone up, you know, at these upper levels are these more what kind of appear as white-blue clouds. They're on the upper levels in the jet stream. They're all drifting to the northeast. So Teddy predominantly is also doing the same thing. But at the same time, there's plenty of Teddy that will linger that could cause more trouble. There's all the warm water. So now here's a water temperature map showing our strongest storm, plenty of warm water, and then also going up to the north with that warmth. So these sorts of environments help them thrive. However, what we're seeing, good news, is that a lot of pushback from the north. We've seen a lot of storms churning and churning in the Atlantic this season. So a lot of this now is pushing back down to the south. And there are some cooler water temperatures once again on that west coast of Africa. More that northern point here. So a lot of our storms will develop right around here. And I say our as in the Atlantic hurricane basin where I'm not even living. So storms here tend to form along that this portion of Africa on the west side. And with the water temperatures cooling down, that's a good thing. We do have Wilfred here, just south, a little bit south of the Caribbean latitude still. So this could pose a threat. Teddy could pose a threat, and as well as Noel. I'm not 100% how to say this name, but there's another tropical storm here. Noel, I believe. I could look that up to be sure, but everything I'm hearing is similar to that. So this storm is now in the Bay of Bengal and is really weakening, but there's tons of moisture and rain to all over India. And so I can switch to the radar view and just give you an idea. Perhaps it doesn't work. There we go. It works close enough there. So there were torrential downpours more on the northern part. That storm rained down a lot, a little bit on the Philippines, and then mostly as it continued to track westward. Now, as far as damaging storms go, I will keep moving along because those ones are not going to be so bad. Beta here right now has had 60-mile-per-hour winds as of the last details brought in at 7 p.m. Central Time. Teddy, on the other hand, is 120-mile wind, so that's definitely what we would call the Cat 3 major hurricane. So that one is more dangerous, and then Tropical Storm Wilfred could definitely gain speed and intensity. So that's one that I really want to focus on, Wilfred and Beta. And now I have these all set up to get onto my green screen with, so they're all going to be a little bit different sizes. But here you can see our largest storm, Teddy. Major hurricane, Category 3. The good news with Wilfred, there's not a lot of moisture in that area where the circulation is right now. There is, however, moisture to the west of Wilfred. So in the future, as Wilfred tracks west, there's tons of clouds that it will be intersecting with. You see they're not really moving. Well, Wilfred is moving. So eventually Wilfred, you can even see parts of these clouds begin to kind of join together with where Wilfred is. So this will be the next big scare. And then where the Bermuda High is, which is now out and over this region, I can see because there are no clouds, that's where a high pressure would be. And then Teddy is going to be displacing the Bermuda High, which is a surface pressure. So at the surface, down, these are now upper levels. I'll kind of show you more about what I'm talking about. Upper levels where green is, there's tons of moisture, tons of rain. White means clouds. Yellow is very dry. So yellow, blue, that's going to help deteriorate these storms. So good thing that it's next to Teddy here, especially where places just got soaked. They're already flooded. And I said, you're going to keep getting flooding after Sally. So here's more of that now. Luckily, the dry air is to the west of those regions. So sooner than later, it will start to recede with the flooding. But Wilfred has tons of moisture to intersect at these upper levels. So that's going to build to it. Now, this is the very low level of the same kind of water vapor imagery. Again, green, white is moist, green is raining, white is clouds. Everything else is pretty dry. So yes, sooner than later, the Gulf Coast will get a bit of a reprieve. I'm going to give this a day or two more to keep raining down, tons of clouds, and then they can kind of start to dry out from Sally. And moving ahead with Wilfred, that'll be the scary one. Teddy hitting Maine is looking less and less likely to me as the days go on. There was just a little bit of a chance, but the way that the jets are working that I'll get into later, you'll see how that's not going to be such a big deal. And I meant to have the low level open there. So there it is, the low level. I want to talk about that Bermuda High. Now, high pressures at the surface will spin the other way of these storms in the northern hemisphere clockwise. So you can tell just by looking at this imagery here that there is some sort of a motion here going this way. That's how I can tell the Bermuda High is displaced to the north right now from where it normally is. So once Teddy moves out of the way and starts to turn north, it'll really stall out, turn north, hook east, and at that time, the Bermuda High will start to slip underneath. Wilfred, by that point, should probably be around the same longitude up and down here as Teddy. So if the Bermuda High is here when Wilfred moves in, it's very easy that Wilfred could cause a lot of flooding, join in with that moisture to hit Hispaniola and to the Caribbean. So that is going to be my biggest thing to look out for here. Of course, with them being this low down on the latitudes, that makes an easy slip into the Gulf as well. So that's probably the biggest threat here, I'd say, moving forward could be Wilfred. Teddy is just very much, if it skims any bit of Maine, I would say it's mostly going to be some of that jet stream action having to do with leftovers of Sally that be a bigger threat than Teddy will be. And then here we have some more development. This is what's going to be adding in more and more moisture. So there will be a little bit of Gulf Coast dryness after Sally, but there's a chance that this moisture will keep on feeding in to some degree once the dry air moves out of the way. Another thing with this dry air being here and seeing the mass wanting to move more westward, it is a little bit lower down that there's just the slightest chance this could affect Hawaii. But with the La Nina in play, the lower than average water temperatures, it's not very likely. So more than anything, I'm hoping that any of the storms generated near Mexico can continue to bring moisture and cooler, not cooler, but cooling air, cooling effects like rain, up toward the fires. So I just keep on watching that area. Now, as far as my last key, we have the moisture, we have the water temperatures for the motions of these storms. Now we have the this here. Looks a little busy, so I'll explain it to you. Don't worry. It's wind shear. So very white, very bright, 100 knots of wind shear. That's just saying the difference in the wind speeds and directions of different parts from like the ground all the way straight up. If you thought of a pole going from the ground to the top of the sky, they're just saying that those winds are not going the same direction. They're going very different here because the jet stream high in the sky is in this location right now. However, we can read these maps to know, there's decreasing shear here. These lines, these blue dotted lines, show that in the last 24 hours, the shear values decreased, meaning that Beta, our Greek alphabet storm here, has gone ahead and found a way to organize a little better. Without the shear, without the different speeds and directions of winds at different heights, the storm can really get more of a circulation here, similar flows all the way around. Luckily, there's some shear just to the west. That's where all the dry air was anyway. So it's not going to be pushing inland here. There's not a lot of time for this storm to gain any kind of intensity before making a landfall per se. So let's go ahead and I'm going to say this will be likely to remain not a category 1, but if any kind of categories come, I would go ahead and put it there as the highest. I haven't done model runs, but might as well. I think that it's interesting here to point out too, with Beta, we can see a little bit of a, it's not fully, how do I put this? The flow is not the same. It's not a congruent flow. If it's much stronger winds on the northwest side of the eye wall, it's not our typical setup. That's kind of alluding to me. There is some shear here. We can see if we go up in the levels, which I've done here, we'll start to notice how and why. So at different levels, if you're looking around Beta, that circulation is actually in a different location. And when the circulation is at a different location from the bottom of the storm to the top of the storm, that implies there's some of that shear factor. There's less chance for that storm to be really strong with an eye wall. So in that case, rain, some damaging wind gusts, definitely, but not like what we saw with Laura, luckily, not like what we just saw with Sally. A little bit of time to clean up from that. So these are very helpful now in determining where Wilfred might be going to. So this is what I'll zoom in here while I'm on this part of the world, because there is a batch of storms out here. Again, I'll do the satellites so we can be clear about where this is, and then I'll look into questions in just a moment once I get through these different levels. So when we have these storms together, before it becomes a tropical storm, before it becomes a hurricane, it's really just these batches of white clouds. Not quite circulating, but now they're beginning to circulate here. So this is placed right between Africa and Venezuela. So what I'll do here then on my next screen is looking at the winds. This is the jet stream level. And this does not, what we see here is that right where Wilfred is, there's not a lot of movement. That to me indicates low shear and indicates the ability for development at that core. It's very small, a small core, so that's a good thing. Looks like that's already the India portion. So I'll go down to what we call the steering winds at around the 500 millibar level. There's tons of ways to look at this, but here we go again. More of the rotation, a little bit wider of an area. And as far as steering goes, which way it would want to move is, yes, staying down what I can see right now to the south. So there's going to be kind of a boomeranging going on, like I had mentioned a moment ago. Teddy is going to want to come north, get pushed up into this jet stream. to some degree. See, if we see these steering winds here around 700, 500 millibars, and also at 300 millibars, Teddy's not quite at that level being pulled into this jet yet, but as time moves forward, I feel like it will get pushed east before it affects Maine. And with that being said, we can look at how that will play an effect on Wilfred's path. So if it's going to be a little bit more time before Teddy moves over, let's say Teddy ends up moving over to here before it actually turns, that means that the Bermuda High, which is now more so over here, will be moving next to it also. And it will want to move south more than north. So it probably honestly will end up pretty close to where Teddy is now, where the strongest winds of Teddy are now. And if that happens and the high is here, then Wilfred will just kind of wander right down south of it. Anyone who tracks these storms in this area has seen this time and time again. The Bermuda High placed right here, and this storm, I do believe, has good potential to come right on into this area of the world where all these islands are, all the people are, Hispaniola, Virgin Islands, on and on. And so as far as the storm goes and by India, I've had a few people asking me about that because they really do have a lot of rain going on. What I was told, I said, hey, you're in the red zone for torrential rain downpours. That was this region down here somebody was asking me about, Kerala. And for sure, there's tons and tons of rain. I said most of the severe weather, luckily, well, for this person, luckily, since they're not a chaser, it's all staying to the north. The center of this storm is around here, and it's not very strong, but gosh, the rain is very much there. Rain accumulation over the next 3 days is looking like this. So this is similar to what we saw with Sally. And this is like feet of rain we're talking about. So these are Sally kind of conditions. This is what's going on now. Just lots and lots of rain. Over the next 24 hours, it's this. And they've already had some. They had more to the north so far. So I don't ever look at these so far out. But wow, isn't that interesting to think of over a week and a half? A lot of that will dry into the ground by then. So model predictions are worse and worse as time goes out. But here with the jet stream, I wanted to point out too, there's part of that storm here by India and the Bay of Bengal is feeding a lot of its energy to the south. It already did, I'll say. As it was over here, a lot of the energy went south. So that was good news before it crossed all this land. And at this point, I'll go ahead and see if anybody has questions. Nothing here. And I usually get questions on my Facebook. So I'm not sure if people are watching there. When I end these, I sometimes find the questions there. But I'll go back and eventually will be posting on my YouTube. Pretty much only, and I'll be using my green screen eventually. So if there's no questions for anybody, go ahead and ask me questions later if you feel like it. I'm just going to do one play out here and kind of recap and show explicitly where these storms, now that I've had a chance to look at it, where I feel like they'll be going. And for the heck of it, I might even play out a model run, which I haven't done. I can just see, though, that beta is not going to be a strong one, but continue the rain falling for the next day or two along the Gulf Coast. And at that point, have a little bit of a break, a day or two of a break, and some of this moisture will likely be lingering in. Wilfred will likely be coming in closer and closer to Dominican Republic as Teddy just sweeps off to sea and remains a fish storm, as some like to call it. I had some chasers asking me or telling me, hey, maybe it's time for me to go chase. I think they're talking about beta. So that had me interested to see what was going on in the forecast. So we had a scare here. I don't want to really say scare, but there was a possible tropical depression forming here by us in Hawaii, but I did not see any space forcing, no solar forcings. So I didn't expect it to ramp up unexpectedly, and certainly that didn't happen. So that's great. We do have another batch of storms just south of Japan. Doesn't look like it would have much any chance of formation into something scary like we've been seeing there with so many typhoons and super typhoons, thanks to these level winds here coming in. Whatever, and now if these were different conditions here, we could be seeing rotation the other way and a storm forming right here too. So not too bad overall. We've had a lot of scary storms lately, and luckily, right now, there's nothing too horrible on the schedule besides Wilfred. So So I will play out that model run. I'm kind of curious now to see what the European model does. Within 24 hours, it's an amazing model. If you ask me, I haven't seen it go wrong often. And then after 24 hours, I just prefer not to use them. But when it comes to models, it's always my favorite one, the European. So I'll go ahead on the winds forecast, play it out, and see how Wilfred might be developing and moving according to this model, while I check and see if there's comments anywhere else before I sign off. So it doesn't have it turning into much of anything, but yes, staying in that region. So I would say, yeah, more rains, more rains. It's nice to see that there's no extra development there. I could see that my post didn't go through the way I wanted it to on my Facebook. So I can see why nobody's in here, and no problems though. I don't really mind. This is all good practice for me right now. And there was one thing I was so curious about now. What was that? I'll go ahead to the National Hurricane Center, and just before I head off, check and show you guys what's going on by me too here. So yeah, because this one definitely looks like it will turn into something and then not bother anybody really on land, and nothing here in Hawaii. So otherwise, Space Weather Live is another source I like to check that's also filled with government public information like that last one. And here we had been up to what was called high values of KP in this last couple weeks. I've noticed some correlations to lightning forecasting with that I'm looking at more and more. And I'm learning more and more about these geomagnetic storms. You can see here our last one was on 8/31. So that was just before some developments of Sally and other storms sprung up. So I'm definitely noticing correlations between solar activity that is posted here. Now I'm learning how to dissect it. I'm in school for space weather, because I realized as I was going to school for meteorology that every time we had these solar storms, and the terms I'm still new to, but they definitely had an effect on our storms on Earth. Immediately after these solar storms would leave the sun, we would have ramp-ups of our hurricane, our tropical activity, a lot of lightning and rapid intensification of hurricanes, and also development in the tropics. Here's the high one. It was the solar radio flux. So yes, all this stuff is new to me and finding it, but that means that you may have had trouble using your radio communications this week. Do you know someone that uses them at work? You can ask them. It was bad, it was problematic, and this is forecastable. It's something that is forecast by NASA. So we're able to get this information now. Go ahead, ask me questions if you have any about this sort of thing. Right now I'm looking at the sun in a certain wavelength and seeing that there's no black spots. There's no magnetic storms right now on this side of the sun. Solar flare disk is something that I'm still really learning to dissect. So these bright regions, we can see that there's a looping here. Those are magnetic field lines. So pretty cool stuff. I hear they move like slinkies, and just like our coaxial cables or something, they're going to be having protons and neutrons, electrons. How they work and how these things interfere with one another depends a lot on how our weather is on Earth. But as far as the sun goes, I know these energized particles are moving back and forth around each way. So really interesting microphysics I'm learning here, and the correlation to our weather right here. So it's helping me forecast better. Now I can look at these things on the sun and say, it's not looking too wild, not looking like 2017 when we saw Irma. So whatever storms we have here now are probably going to stay the way they are. So that'll wrap it up for now. Luckily, I'm not seeing any huge reasons for big scares on land right now. Good news forecast. So sad for the chasers, and good for everybody else who just wants to relax at home. I hope everybody has a nice day and enjoy the weather. This is your weather woman, meteorologist Amy Metz.